Hey everybody, John here. So I'm going to jump right into it. Today's September 9th, and I'm making this video because I think we are at the precipice of a major turn in the quality of life we're going to experience on this planet. I wouldn't say that it's the end of the world, but I would not say that either. And what I mean by that is not that we're going to turn into a giant fireball and go shooting into the sun, although that might be better. What I'm talking about is that we, as a first world country, are going to see a dramatic change of quality of life, whether that's a reduction in the availability of food, the availability of power. You can have rolling blackouts, what have you. A change in the quality of and availability of services. So maybe the sheriff is going to take a few more hours to get to you, or maybe the police just aren't going to be able to respond because they are permanently undermanned. Also, a reduction in the quality of healthcare. So maybe you can't get into see the doctor, or maybe you can't get into the hospital because basically the hospital went out of business because people weren't paying for COVID, what have you. So I think we're going to see stuff like that in the short term, real basically turning to shit. And the stuff that we saw laughing at Venezuela, like I would never stand in line in a bread line, we're going to be doing that soon enough. I think we're going to be getting a box of food at the ass end of a deuce and a half within the next year or so. Probably sooner. So, let's work from the lesser disturbing and changeable to the stuff that I think is going to put us over the edge that much faster. The Summer Olympics that Japan just had, it was a $25 billion investment by that country. And I think the Olympics is going to turn out to be a big hemorrhage of money for them. They weren't able to sell hot dogs and pendants and put people in hotel rooms. And so, what that's going to translate into is a hit to their economy. Now, Japan's economy is not foolproof. From 1990 to 2000, they had what's referred to as the lost decade, where they experienced a long recession and had out of control pricing, and basically their economy suffered for 10 years. If Japan's economy goes that way, Japan is the largest buyer of American debt. Contrary to popular belief, it's not China. China is second, Japan is number one. If Japan's economy falters, then we as Americans run the risk of them wanting to negotiate the debt or wanting to change the terms of the agreement. However you want to describe it, basically they might buy less or they might want money back. Either one of those would hit us, and that might be a problem here at home. We've already lost 1-star rating on our credit. I wouldn't be surprised if we lost another star rating. What else? So, currently, and I think going forward, we're going to see this to a greater degree, but we are experiencing all kinds of shortages, supply chain shortages that you may or may not be aware of. They're talking about shortages of cars, the actual cars sitting in the dealer's lot, but they're also talking about component shortages, chips being a big one that's in the news. But also, there's the labor shortage of getting the trucks and the truck drivers to deliver the cars, that sort of stuff. That's just one thing that we're discussing there. But all up and down everything, we're experiencing shortages that may or may not be evident at this moment, whether it's containers for items, or what is the latest shortage I heard of? Ice cream or peanut butter or something, because they don't have the right polymers, or there's a shortage of it to make the container to ship the item. It's not a shortage of the item, it's a secondary level shortage. I think we're going to see that continuously now. I think the days of pre-COVID and walking into a fully stocked supermarket are over. I think now empty shelves are going to become part of the norm of life. Now, One of the problems I see is that we have what I'm describing as post-election polarization, and this is where battle lines have been drawn basically between the parties. I think we've now got three parties. We've got the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Trumpers, because somehow, for some reason, the Trump people have rolled out of the Republican Party and are now sort of off by themselves, almost touting Trump like some despot. No other way to really describe it. Now, this is of concern because at the same time, along those same lines, we're getting people buying a phenomenal amount of firepower and ammunition. And when I was in the store the other day, I heard a kid ask his mom, "Why are we buying so much ammunition?" And she said it's for the apocalypse. Now, when you think, what exactly do they mean by that? We're not talking about the Chinese coming over the hill, although maybe some people are. And we're not talking about zombies coming up the road. What we're talking about are Americans, our fellow Americans, and shooting at them. So that's sort of screwed up. Now, it's interesting that the vaccine has been lost in a fog of political rhetoric as well, and the vaccine is being rolled out to people along almost the same lines as I just mentioned above. The Democrats very interested in getting the vaccine. Republican-leaning people are a little less trusting and think basically the same stuff that Trump was putting out about not getting the vaccine. We're still seeing that going forward. The bummer thing is what this is doing is translating into a direct stressor on the medical industry. I don't care if you get the vaccine or not. That's not my point. My point is that if you don't want the vaccine and you get sick, then you shouldn't go to the hospital. And I hate to say that, but you being stupid and not getting the vaccine and then going to the hospital interferes with my ability to go get a colonoscopy or go get a broken bone set or go get, I don't know, a heart valve replacement, something like that. So healthy people who have gotten vaccinated are getting sick because people who are questioning the vaccine are taking up spots in the hospital, and now our hospitals are full. And so, as I said initially, that's a reduction in service that we're seeing. Let's hope to God that all those people who are taking up all those beds can pay the tremendous medical bills that they're looking at with a COVID experience. And my understanding is that even people who have medical insurance, if they go to a hospital that has no ICU beds, they get life flighted to another hospital, and that's a quick $25,000 to $50,000 out of the pocket that isn't covered by insurance. So that's that. That's enough of the political issues. Let's talk about weather and climate. First off, if you don't believe in climate change, or if you do, that's not the issue here. I don't care what your thoughts are, because basically Mother Nature doesn't care how you want to describe it. Let's talk about the facts, okay? The facts are right now in the West where I'm located, we're experiencing a mega drought. There's some areas of the country out here that haven't seen average rain in up to 12 years. We're experiencing drought and weather abnormalities on a more frequent basis, to a greater degree, and for a longer period of time. Those are the three problems that we're having to deal with. Where I am sitting here in Estacada, Oregon, I experienced personally the hottest 3 days of my life. And I've traveled all around the world. I've been to the Dead Sea. I've been to the deserts. I've been all over the place. And this is the hottest I've ever been. And it was 118 here for 3 days. Okay, now what that did was it changed the temperatures of the lakes and the streams. It stressed the fish, it stressed the salmon, it stressed the trout. It killed millions of mollusks out at the coast. Trees, plants, everything. I mean, all kinds of things. Bugs, all kinds of stuff. They're like, oh shit, you're right. That stuff is dying now. Okay, we haven't had rain here measurably since the beginning of the summer. That's also translated into unprecedented fires. We've got fires going on. It's cloudy or murky behind me, or however you want to describe it, because there's a fire going on again just up the valley. I say again because we had one here last year, same time. There were the fires down near the border of Oregon and California. There were the fires that were putting Lake Tahoe in danger. All these fires, the funny thing is, if you add up the amount of surface area that is currently burning around the world, it is just a little less than the amount of surface area that is burning in Siberia. And that fire is not getting much attention, while it should, because what it's doing is dumping a hell of an amount of soot and carbon and ash on the Arctic ice and raising the albedo there. So, what does the mega drought translate into here, and the fact that we had that heat bubble or heat dome or omega block here for those 3 days? And what happened was it moved north by northeast and went up to Canada, but at the same time it went and fucked up a little of our grain belt and the output of grains and corn and stuff from North and South Dakota. So we're going to see a reduction of grain and corn harvest by between 30 and 50% this year. And that's the worst it's been since the Dust Bowl. And why do we care about this? We should care about the corn in particular because so many things now are being made from corn. Corn syrup, corn meal, corn starch, cellulose, and of course, corn flakes. Now, a reduction in corn output is going to translate into shortages and higher prices of things that are made from all those components that I just mentioned. So that's going to be bad. Also, a lack of grain is translating into a lack of, well, you're going to have flour and bread and oatmeal and that sort of stuff, higher prices. But what it's doing is it's making it harder for farmers, for ranchers, to feed their cattle. I personally know a guy whose family is into ranching in Utah, and they are culling their herd by 80%. They've got 500 head of cattle, and they're weeding out 400 of them. So, just basically because they can't get the grain to feed more than 100 through the winter. And so the question arises, will they have enough head stock next year to re-establish themselves, or are they basically on a one-way road down to bankruptcy? In that respect, recovery may not be possible for them. Let's talk about other issues at hand now. Floods. My God. Since I wrote the outline for this presentation, we've had some crazy-ass weather that I didn't even anticipate. Hurricane Ida made its way up through New Orleans and Louisiana and then headed basically in a beeline straight across diagonally through the country to New York City. We had unprecedented weather in the east. I grew up in New Jersey as a kid. I'm telling you, the flooding that they experienced just last week because of Hurricane Ida is nothing I ever saw as a kid. And for the first time in history, they had flash flood warnings in New York City. Okay? But let's not just focus on Ida. Let's talk about the flooding that occurred outside of Nashville, Tennessee about a week and a half ago. Then there was comparable flooding outside of Asheville, North Carolina, about 2.5 weeks before that. Yesterday there was unprecedented flooding in a small town outside of Mexico City. And then about a month ago, I guess, they had massive flooding washing whole villages away in Germany. And a lot of this adverse weather is a result of what's called an omega block. It's where the jet stream takes on an omega shape. And that is a result of a reduction in albedo at the Arctic. Albedo is ice's ability to reflect heat or energy. And when you put stuff like soot and ash on a white surface, you reduce its ability to reflect, and that's what's happening. A slow and meandering jet stream like we are experiencing now causes this kind of wacky weather. These are things that we can't really change because of the amount of time that is involved in changing them. So the term that they like to say is that it's been baked into the pie. Now, recently, it's come about that we are at risk of losing the transatlantic thermohaline conveyor. You may know that as the Gulf Stream. We are at risk of losing that within the next 10 to 20 years. And that is because these things that they call thermal chimneys that basically they change the temperature low down of the water and they bring the heat down and bring nutrients up. That system is breaking just south of Iceland because they're not getting refreezing, and it has to deal with the weight of the water and the salinity and stuff like that. If you think I'm bullshitting, let me know and I'll post some citations. But anyway, that is at risk of stopping. If that happens, Europe is screwed. That's 10 to 20 years out. At the same time, because all the world currents are interconnected, if we lose the transatlantic conveyor, we probably also will lose the Humboldt conveyor. And the Humboldt conveyor is what controls the heat moderation in the Pacific. If we lose that, basically the sentiment is that we are going to be dead in days. And that's because when you stop that, the algae, the plankton is expected to die, which will settle down, and the algae on the bottom will eat that, and the algae down at the bottom is bad and releases hydrogen sulfide gas, basically a big eggy fart, and that will kill us in just a few days. Question me about that one because I've got a really interesting video that I just saw put out by Peter Wadhams, who's an authority on Arctic ice, and Peter Beckwith, who's a paleoclimatologist with the University of Toronto. If you think I'm bullshitting, let me know. I'll provide a link because it's pretty interesting and scarier than shit. Okay, so what can we do about this? As I said, there's really sort of nothing to do. Nature doesn't care. Nature doesn't care if you think I'm full of shit or not. The trout are still dying. The water going over the fish ladders still 70 degrees. The trout can't stomach it. It's all fucked up. Okay? The best you can do, I guess, is to talk to your friends and loved ones and see what they're thinking, or see what options they think are available. And I say that because of this. I had a talk with my significant other about this. And she says, yeah, you're spot on with what you're thinking or believing, but I don't think you have the skills to figure this out or to make it through this, saying that to me. And she also added that we're not going to be in any different boat than anybody else. So why aren't we comfortable with the idea of going to the ass end of a deuce and a half and get handed a case of MREs and a flat of bottled water for the week? And that would be fine. But what I think is going to happen is those people who are relying on the government and or the system for a handout are going to wind up getting robbed, hurt, or brutalized on the way home by the people who maybe already have some and want yours, or couldn't be bothered and want yours. So you'll have those people. That's how I think my girlfriend is going to get fucked up, get robbed, because she fails to acknowledge anything but what Lincoln described as the bitter angels of our nature. So, the younger you are, the more I think the road you are about to face is going to be hard and bad. There's no way around it. I think you should maximize the time you have now and do the things you want to do now, because next year I think we're going to see massive food shortages and food lines, and it's again because I said we're going to have a reduced grain and corn output. That's going to reduce the amount of beef in the grocery stores, and it's going to reduce the amount of bread and whatnot. Food's going to become a real issue real soon. So I'm sorry to be a stick in the mud. See, I wrote that. Sorry about being a stick in the mud, but I think it's a fact that we need to sort of get our minds around that things are going to change. As I said, if you think I'm full of shit, I would appreciate you letting me know, and I will come back with things that substantiate what I have explained here. I'll come back with fact, because I didn't just pull this out of my ass. If you think I'm full of shit, I would appreciate it if you came back with fact or articles or citations or what have you. And they better not be from Alex Jones, okay? Anyway, so there's that. I gotta go to lunch. Talk to you later. John out.